Dr. Han Junho stared at his computer screen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The data from the deep-sea sensors couldn't be wrong. They had triple-checked everything. Something was creating energy pulses at the bottom of the Challenger Deep, nearly 11 kilometers beneath the ocean's surface. He took off his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. The small office at the Korean Oceanographic Institute was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. The clock on the wall showed 3:15 a.m., but he couldn't stop working. Not with a discovery this big. "You're still here." Dr. Kim Mina's voice made him jump. She stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. Her long black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she looked as tired as he felt. "Look at this," Junho said, pointing to his screen. "The energy readings from Station 7. They're not random." Mina walked over and placed a coffee cup on his desk. She leaned in, her eyes scanning the data. "That's impossible. Nothing down there could generate this kind of energy." "But something is," Junho replied. He pulled up another screen showing a pattern of peaks and valleys in the energy readings. "See, it repeats every 6 hours. Nature doesn't make patterns this perfect." Mina sat down at her own desk and quickly typed on her keyboard. More data filled her screen. "I'm checking the other stations," she said. "If this is real, we should see similar patterns." They worked in silence for the next hour, analyzing data from all 10 monitoring stations placed around the Challenger Deep. Each station showed the same pattern, but at slightly different times. "It's like a wave," Mina said suddenly. "Look, the signal moves from east to west across the trench. Whatever's causing this, it's not just one point source, it's something big." Junho felt his heart race. In 15 years of studying the ocean's deepest point, he had never seen anything like this. The Challenger Deep was supposed to be a simple trench, the deepest one on Earth, yes, but just a crack in the planet's crust. Not this. Not something that produced energy patterns that looked artificial. "We need to tell Director Park," Mina said, already reaching for her phone. "Wait." Junho held up his hand. "Let's be sure first. Can you run a comparison with all known natural phenomena? Underwater volcanoes, thermal vents, everything." Mina nodded and started typing again. Her computer hummed as it processed the data. After a few minutes, she shook her head. "Nothing matches. This is completely new." Junho stood up and walked to the window. The lights of Seoul sparkled in the distance, but his mind was on the darkness 11 kilometers below the Pacific Ocean. What had they found? The next morning, they presented their findings to Director Park in the Institute's main conference room. The old man listened carefully, his face showing no emotion as they explained the energy patterns, the wave-like movement, and the perfect timing. "You understand what you're suggesting?" Director Park asked when they finished. "If these patterns are artificial, then something or someone put technology at the bottom of the deepest ocean trench on Earth." Junho completed the thought. "Yes, we understand." Director Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. "I'm calling an emergency meeting. We'll need international cooperation for this. Dr. Han, Dr. Kim, prepare everything. We're going to need submarines, equipment, and a team. The best we can find." As they left the conference room, Mina grabbed Junho's arm. "Are you ready for this? If we're right, this could change everything we know about Earth's history." Junho looked at the data tablet in his hand, at the perfect patterns that shouldn't exist in the deepest dark of the ocean. "Ready or not," he said, "something's waiting for us down there. And we need to find out what it is." That afternoon, as news of their discovery spread through the scientific community, phones started ringing across the world. A team would need to be assembled. Equipment would need to be gathered. And somewhere in the vast darkness of the Challenger Deep, something that shouldn't exist continued to pulse with energy, waiting to be found. 2 weeks after the discovery, the port of Busan buzzed with activity. The research vessel, Haedong, stood ready at the dock, its white hull gleaming in the morning sun. At 120 meters long, it was the most advanced research ship in the Korean fleet, and now it would take them to the deepest part of the ocean. Lee Do-hyun walked up the gangway, carrying his small suitcase. As the team's submersible pilot, he had spent the last decade guiding vessels through the darkness of the deep ocean. But this mission would take him deeper than he had ever gone before. "Welcome aboard," Dr. Han Chun-ho called from the deck. He looked different from 2 weeks ago, more energetic despite the heavy workload. "Your quarters are on the second level." "Thanks," Do-hyun said, pausing to look at the massive crane that would lower their submersible into the water. "When can I see her?" "The Mugunhwa. She's in the hangar. Kang Huk is still working on her systems." In the ship's hangar, the submersible sat like a giant metal egg. Kang Huk lay under it, his tools spread around him as he checked every connection. At 40, he was the oldest member of the team and the most experienced engineer in deep-sea technology. "Everything okay down there?" Do-hyun asked. Huk slid out, wiping his hands on a cloth. "She's beautiful," he said, patting the submersible's hull. "Rated for 12,000 meters, though no one's ever tested that. Until now." Dr. Kim Minna appeared at the hangar entrance with Dr. Park Jia, the team's marine biologist. Jia carried a large case filled with sampling equipment. At 32, she was the youngest on the team, but her work on deep-sea ecosystems had earned worldwide respect. "The satellite data came in," Minna announced, holding up her tablet. "The energy signals are getting stronger." Everyone gathered around to look. The patterns they had discovered 2 weeks ago now pulsed with twice the strength. Whatever waited in the deep was becoming more active. "Could it be dangerous?" Jia asked, looking at the submersible. "That's why we have every safety system ever invented," Huk replied. "And some I designed just for this mission." They spent the rest of the morning checking equipment and running tests. The Mugunhwa's systems were complex. Layers of backup power, emergency oxygen, multiple communication arrays. Everything had to work perfectly at depths where the pressure could crush a car like a paper cup. At noon, Director Park arrived with representatives from 3 different governments. The mission had grown beyond Korea. Now it was a matter of global interest. They all gathered in the ship's main conference room. "You are the best team we could assemble," Director Park said, looking at each of them. Dr. Han and Dr. Kim discovered the signals. Pilot Lee has more deep-sea hours than anyone in Asia. Dr. Park's research will help us understand what we find. And Engineer Kang built half the systems we use to explore the ocean. He paused, his expression serious. "But what you're about to attempt has never been done. No one has ever spent more than 3 hours at the bottom of Challenger Deep. You'll need to stay longer, much longer." "The Mugunhwa can handle it," Huk said confidently. "It's not just the machine I'm worried about," Director Park replied. "The human mind isn't meant for that kind of darkness, that kind of pressure. You'll be farther from the surface than the peak of Mount Everest is high." Chun-ho stood up. "We've trained for this. We're ready." The others nodded. They had spent the last 2 weeks practicing emergency procedures, learning each other's roles, becoming a team. They had to be ready. That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, the Haedong left port. They would reach the Challenger Deep in 5 days. 5 days to prepare for the deepest dive in human history. Do-hyun stood at the rail, watching the coast disappear. Behind him, he could hear Huk running more tests on the submersible, Jia organizing her lab, Minna and Chun-ho discussing the latest data. They were more than just a crew now. They were explorers, about to venture into one of the last unknown places on Earth. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, something waited for them. The morning of the dive was quiet. No one spoke much as they ate breakfast in the ship's mess hall. After 5 days at sea, they had reached the spot above the Challenger Deep where the energy signals were strongest. "Final check," Kang Huk said as they suited up in the hangar. He moved from person to person, checking each pressure suit's seals and systems. The suits were white with blue stripes, designed to withstand the crushing depths they would face. Lee Do-hyun sat in the pilot's seat of the Mugunghwa, running through his pre-dive checklist. The submersible's interior was cramped but comfortable, with 5 seats surrounded by screens and control panels. Everything was new, everything was tested, but his hands still shook slightly as he worked. Nervous? Dr. Park Jia asked as she climbed in beside him. She was setting up her equipment to record the deep-sea life that they would encounter. Excited, Do-hyun replied. But they both knew it was partly a lie. Everyone was nervous. No one had ever gone this deep for this long. Dr. Han Juno and Dr. Kim Mina took their seats, both carrying tablets to monitor the energy signals. Hyuk was the last to enter, sealing the hatch behind him with 3 heavy clunks. Mugunghwa to bridge, Do-hyun called over the radio. All systems green. Ready for launch. Copy that. Director Park's voice crackled back. Good luck down there. Remember, if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you come back up. The crane lifted them slowly, swinging the submersible out over the dark water. Do-hyun felt the slight sway, then the splash as they hit the surface. Water covered the viewports. Beginning descent, he announced, passing 100 meters. The first 1,000 meters were familiar. They saw the usual fish, the normal darkness. But as they passed 2,000 meters, things began to change. Look at that, Jia said softly. Strange lights flickered in the darkness, not the usual bioluminescence they were used to seeing. These lights moved in patterns, almost like they were dancing. Getting some weird readings, Hyuk muttered from his engineering station. The sonar is picking up echoes that shouldn't be there. At 5,000 meters, the water pressure made the submersible's hull creak. Do-hyun kept his eyes on the depth gauge, watching the numbers climb. 6,000 meters, 7,000 meters. Each 1,000 meters brought more strange lights, more unusual readings. Energy signals are much stronger now. Mina reported at 8,000 meters. They're definitely coming from below us. The lights outside had changed again. Now they saw curtains of blue-green light, waving like auroras in the deep. Fish they had never seen before swam through these curtains, their bodies glowing with the same strange light. 9,000 meters, Do-hyun announced. The hull creaked louder. The darkness outside was absolute except for the mysterious lights. Pressure is within normal range. Life support stable. 10,000 meters, he said a while later. They were now deeper than any human had ever stayed for more than a few minutes, starting final approach to target depth. Suddenly, all their instruments went crazy. The sonar screen filled with static. The depth gauge flickered. Even the lights inside the submersible dimmed for a moment. What's happening? Juno asked, gripping his seat as the submersible shuddered. Some kind of electromagnetic field, Hyuk said, his fingers flying over his controls. It's interfering with our systems. Should we abort? Do-hyun's hand hovered over the emergency ascent control. Wait, Mina called out. Look! Through the viewports, they saw it. A massive shape loomed in the darkness ahead of them. Not rock, not a sea creature, but something else. Something that glowed with the same strange light they had been seeing. 10,900 meters. Do-hyun read from his backup depth gauge. The main one had stopped working. We're almost at the bottom. The shape grew clearer as they approached. It was smooth, curved, definitely not natural. And it was pulsing with light in the same 6-hour pattern they had detected from the surface. Turn on the external lights, Juno ordered. Do-hyun flipped the switch. Powerful beams cut through the darkness, illuminating their discovery for the first time. No one spoke. No one could. They had expected to find something at the bottom of the ocean, but not this. Not something that would change everything they thought they knew about Earth's history. The descent was over. The real mystery was about to begin. The massive door stood before them, embedded in the rock wall of the Challenger Deep. It was perfectly smooth, made of a dark metal that seemed to drink in their lights. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a faint blue light. "It's 30 meters high," Dr. Kim Mina said, checking the sonar readings. Her voice was barely a whisper, filled with awe. "And it's perfectly preserved. No rust, no damage. After all this time under the ocean." Lee Do-yun kept the Mugunghwa steady in the water, fighting the deep currents that tried to push them away from the door. Through the viewports, they could see strange fish swimming around them, their bodies lighting up with the same blue glow as the symbols. "The energy readings are strongest right here," Dr. Han Chun-ho said, his eyes fixed on his tablet. "Whatever's powering this door, it's been running for a very long time." Dr. Park Jia was recording everything with their cameras. "These fish are impossible," she said. "They're like nothing we've ever seen before. Look at how they interact with the door's energy field." The fish were swimming in perfect patterns around the door, following the lines of symbols. It was as if they were part of the system, living components in some vast machine. "Found something," Kang Huk called from his engineering station. "There's a regular pattern in the energy pulses. It's like a heartbeat." Suddenly, one of the symbols on the door flashed brighter. Then another and another. The patterns of light began to move, flowing across the door's surface like water. "What did we do?" Do-yun asked, gripping his controls tighter. "Nothing," Huk said, checking his readings. "This is happening on its own. Or," he paused, looking at his screens, "maybe it's reacting to our presence." The lights moved faster now, racing along the lines of symbols. The fish scattered, their own lights blinking rapidly. The water around them seemed to vibrate with energy. "Look!" Minna pointed to the center of the door. A circle of symbols had begun to spin, like the combination lock of a safe. With each turn, it glowed brighter. "Should we back away?" Do-yun asked, his finger hovering over the reverse thrusters. Before anyone could answer, the spinning stopped. There was a deep sound, so low they felt it more than heard it. The door shuddered. "Something's happening," Junho said. He pressed a button on their radio. "Surface, this is Mugunghwa. The door is active. Repeat, the door is." A line appeared down the middle of the door, a crack of brilliant blue light. The crack widened slowly, revealing another space behind it. Water rushed past them as the massive door swung open, but somehow the current didn't pull them in. "It's an airlock," Huk said in disbelief. "There's some kind of force field holding the water back. This technology, it's impossible." Through the opening, they could see a long tunnel stretching into the rock. The walls were made of the same dark metal as the door, lined with the same glowing symbols. The tunnel was dry inside, protected from the crushing ocean by invisible forces they couldn't understand. "Surface, are you getting this?" Chun-ho called into the radio. Only static answered. The energy field around them was blocking their communications. "What do we do?" Jia asked, still recording everything. "We weren't prepared for this. We don't have any way to dock or enter." As if in answer, a section of the tunnel floor near the entrance began to change. Metal panels slid aside, revealing a pool of water that connected to the ocean where they floated. "It's a docking bay," Huk said, studying his readings. "The system is guiding us in. Look, those lights along the floor. They're like landing lights at an airport." The 5 team members looked at each other. They had come to study energy readings and strange signals. Instead, they had found a door to somewhere else, built by someone else, waiting at the bottom of the deepest part of Earth's oceans. "We need to decide," Junho said quietly. "Do we go in, or do we return to the surface?" The tunnel waited before them, its secrets hidden in the darkness beyond the door. Above them, 11 kilometers of ocean pressed down, separating them from the world they knew. Whatever they decided would change history, if they survived to tell it. Docking complete, Lee Do-yun announced as the Mugunghwa settled into the underwater pool. The tunnel's strange force field had let them pass through easily, keeping the ocean's crushing pressure at bay. Kang Hyuk checked his instruments one last time. Air pressure outside is normal. Temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. The air, it's breathable. Somehow, this place is still working after all this time. Dr. Han Junho looked at his team. They had trained for deep-sea exploration, not for this. "We stay together," he said. "No one goes anywhere alone." They put on their portable air tanks as a precaution and opened the Mugumwa's hatch. The air that rushed in smelled clean, with a slight metallic tang. Dr. Kim Mina was the first to step onto the facility's floor. Her boots made soft clicking sounds on the dark metal surface. "The symbols on the walls," Dr. Park Jia said, pointing with her camera. "They're moving, like the ones on the door. But these are different. They're showing numbers, measurements." Kuk walked to a nearby wall panel. "This is a monitoring station," he said, his eyes wide with understanding. "Look at these displays. They're showing Earth's tectonic plate movements, all of them, everywhere on the planet." The tunnel led them deeper into the facility. The walls were lined with screens showing maps of Earth's crust, diagrams of pressure points, and streams of data in the strange flowing symbols. Every few meters, crystal pillars rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with blue light. "These crystals," Mina said, studying them with her instruments. "They're what we detected from the surface. They're producing energy, but they're also connecting to something." They entered a large circular room. In its center, a hologram of Earth floated in the air, slowly spinning. Beneath the planet's surface, lines of force showed the movement of tectonic plates. Red spots marked areas of high pressure. "I don't believe it," Junho whispered. "This facility isn't just watching the plates, it's controlling them. Those red spots, they're places where the facility is preventing major earthquakes." "Look at this," Jia called from another panel. "These readings go back millions of years. This place has been working all this time, keeping Earth's crust stable." Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the facility. The lights flickered, and several screens went dark. When they came back on, new red spots had appeared on the Earth hologram. "The system is failing," Huck said, rushing to check the readings. "These crystals, they're running out of power. Without them, the facility can't maintain plate stability." "What happens then?" Do-Yun asked, though they all knew the answer. "Earthquakes," Junho said. "Massive ones. Volcanic eruptions. The plates would move freely for the first time in millions of years." Another rumble shook the room. More screens went dark. The hologram of Earth flickered like a dying light bulb. "We need to do something," Mina said. She was studying the symbols on a central control panel. "The facility's builders, they left this here for a reason. They must have known someone would find it eventually." "Can we even understand their technology?" Jia asked. "It's millions of years ahead of anything we have." Fuck was moving from panel to panel, his engineer's mind trying to grasp the facility's systems. "The basic principles are the same," he said. "Energy, pressure, balance. The technology is advanced, but the science is science." A third rumble, stronger than before. The crystal pillar's light was growing dimmer. On the hologram, more red spots appeared across Earth's surface. "We have to try," Junho decided. "If this facility fails completely, the damage to Earth would be catastrophic. Millions would die." The team looked at each other. They had come to explore the ocean's deepest point and found themselves holding the fate of the planet in their hands. "Where do we start?" Do-Yun asked. Junho looked at the failing systems around them. "We start by understanding. Everything here has a purpose. We need to find it before it's too late." The crystal pillars pulsed weakly, counting down the time they had left to save not just themselves, but everyone on the surface above. Time was running out. In the heart of the ancient facility, the team worked frantically to understand its systems. The crystal pillars grew dimmer with each passing hour, and the rumbles from deep within the Earth were getting stronger. "I think I found something," Dr. Kim Mina called out. She stood before a wall covered in flowing symbols. These aren't just random patterns. They're instructions. Kang Huk joined her, his eyes following the moving lines. After hours of study, they were starting to make sense of the facility's basic language. "It's showing us the crystal matrix," he said, "how the pillars connect to channel energy into the Earth's crust." Dr. Park Jia was monitoring the facility's sensors. "Another pressure spike in the Pacific Ring of Fire," she reported. "The system barely contained it. We got maybe 6 hours before the crystals fail completely." Li Doyun sat at what they had discovered was the main control station. The hologram of Earth still floated above them, now covered in angry red spots where the planet's crust strained against itself. "Can we recharge the crystals somehow?" Dr. Han Juno shook his head. "They're not batteries. They're more like living things. They grew here, feeding on energy from the Earth's core. But they're dying. Then we grow new ones," Minna said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She pointed to another set of symbols on the wall. "Look, the facility didn't just monitor the crystals, it created them. There's a chamber below us." Hyuk studied the symbols carefully. "She's right. But the process uses incredible amounts of energy we don't have." "What about the Mugunwa?" Do-Yun suggested. "We could connect her power systems to the facility." "It wouldn't be enough," Huck replied. "We'd need something stronger, something like—" He stopped, his eyes widening. "The pressure, the ocean itself." Chono understood immediately. The weight of 11 kilometers of water, all that potential energy, pressing down on us. "Could we harness it?" Minna asked. "Convert that pressure into the energy we need." Huck was already moving to another control panel. The facility's builders must have done it before. They built this place under the deepest part of the ocean for a reason. Another rumble shook the facility, stronger than any before. Several screens cracked. One of the crystal pillars went dark completely. "If we do this wrong," Junho said quietly, "we could break the seals holding the ocean back. The pressure would crush us instantly." "If we do nothing," Jia reminded them, "the whole planet suffers. Look." She pointed to her tablet, which showed predictions for what would happen when the facility failed. Earthquakes stronger than any in recorded history. Volcanic eruptions that could darken the sky for years. Tsunamis that would swallow coastal cities whole. Junho looked at his team. They were scientists, explorers. Now they had to be something more. "We need to decide," he said. "Do we risk everything trying to save this facility? Or do we return to the surface and hope Earth's crust can stabilize itself naturally?" "You know that's not a real choice," Do-Yun said. "We can't just leave." "Then we all agree?" Chono asked. One by one, they nodded. "I can modify the Mugunwa's power systems," Huck said. "Create a connection to the facility's energy grid, if we can understand how the crystal growth chamber works." "I'll help with that," Minna said. "The symbols about the crystal formation are similar to biological growth patterns I've studied." "Jia and I will monitor the plate pressures," Junho decided. "Try to predict where the next big movement will come from. Do-Yun, we'll need you to handle any emergency protocols if something goes wrong." They split up, each heading to their tasks. None of them spoke about what would happen if they failed. They couldn't afford to think about it. As they worked, the ancient facility creaked around them, holding back the weight of the ocean for just a little longer. In the hologram above, Earth continued to spin, its insides churning with forces that had been kept in check for millions of years. Forces that would soon break free, unless 5 humans could do the impossible. The crystal growth chamber was a circular room deep below the main facility. Its walls were lined with empty slots where crystals had once grown. In the center stood a tall machine, its surface covered in the same flowing symbols they had seen above. "Power connections are ready," Kang Huk called out. He had spent the last hour connecting cables from the Mugunwa to the ancient machinery. Sweat dripped from his forehead, despite the cool air. Dr. Kim Minna worked at the chamber's main control panel, her fingers moving quickly over the symbols. "I think I understand the growth sequence," she said. The facility used the ocean's pressure to create energy, then fed that energy into raw minerals to grow the crystals. Dr. Park Ji's voice came through their radios from the upper level. Pressure is building in 3 major fault lines. The remaining crystals can't hold much longer. How much time? Dr. Han Chuno asked. He stood with Li Doyun near the chamber entrance, ready to seal it if something went wrong. Maybe an hour, Jio replied. The Pacific Plate is showing serious strain. Another rumble shook the facility. This one was strong enough to knock tools off tables and send loose items sliding across the floor. We have to try now, Huck said. The Mugungwa's power systems are at maximum capacity. If we wait any longer, the whole facility might collapse. Minna nodded, her hands hovering over the final controls. Everyone ready. They all took their positions. Huck stood by the power controls, ready to channel energy from their submarine into the ancient systems. Do-hyun watched the pressure gauges, knowing he might have to seal the chamber in seconds if things went wrong. Chuno kept his eyes on the overall facility readings, making sure the ocean stayed where it belonged, outside. Starting the sequence, Minna announced. She pressed her hands against the symbols, and they began to glow brighter. The machine in the center of the room hummed to life. Light raced along its surface, following paths that had been dark for millions of years. The empty crystal slots in the walls began to shimmer. Power levels rising, Huck reported. The Mugungwa's engines are at full output. Releasing the pressure valves, Minna said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she worked the controls. Special channels in the facility's walls opened, letting the weight of the ocean press down in controlled ways. The pressure turned to energy, flowing into the ancient machine like a river of light. It's working, Juno called out. On his screens, he could see energy levels rising throughout the facility. The system is accepting the power. The machine's hum grew louder. In the empty slots along the walls, small points of light began to appear. They grew slowly at first, then faster, taking on the familiar crystal shape they had seen in the upper chamber. Growth rate is stable, Minna reported. The new crystals are forming just like the old ones. But something was wrong. The pressure gauge near Do-hyun started climbing too fast. The facility's outer walls are straining, he warned. They weren't designed to channel this much power all at once. We can't stop now, Huck said. The crystals are only half formed. If we cut the power, we lose everything. Another violent shake rocked the chamber. Warning lights flashed on every screen. Above them, they could hear the facility's metal walls groaning under the ocean's weight. Jia, Chuno called into his radio. What's happening up there? The fault lines are shifting, she answered. The old crystals are failing faster than we predicted. We need the new ones now. The machine's hum had become a roar. The growing crystals pulsed with bright blue light, but the facility around them was starting to crack. 10 more seconds, Minna said, her eyes fixed on the growth readings. Just 10 more seconds. Do-hyun watched in horror as a crack appeared in the chamber ceiling. We don't have 10 seconds. Yes, we do, Huck said firmly. He moved to the power controls and placed his hands on them. Because we didn't come 11,000 meters down to fail now. The crack spread, but they held their ground. The machine roared, the crystals grew, and 5 humans stood together in the deep, betting everything on one impossible chance to save their world. The new crystals glowed with brilliant blue light, filling their slots in the facility's walls. The machine that had created them slowly powered down, its roar fading to a gentle hum. In the sudden quiet, the team could hear their own heavy breathing and the soft ping of cooling metal. Crystal growth is complete, Dr. Kim Minna announced, her voice tired but happy. They're stable. Power output is actually stronger than the old ones. Kang Huck checked his readings and smiled. The facility's systems are accepting them. Energy is flowing into the plate stabilization network. Dr. Park Ji's excited voice came through their radios from the upper level. The pressure points are responding. The fault lines are stabilizing. Whatever you did down there, it worked. Dr. Han Juno looked at the cracked ceiling of the growth chamber. The crack had stopped spreading just seconds before it would have broken through. They had come that close to disaster. "Let's get back up to the main room," he said. "I want to see the full picture." They made their way up through the facility, past walls now bright with fresh energy from the new crystals. In the main control room, a hologram of Earth spun slowly above them. The angry red spots that had covered it were fading one by one. "Look at this," Lee Doyun said, pointing to a new display that had appeared on one of the walls. The flowing symbols were different now, easier to read somehow. "It's a message," Minna said, studying the symbols. The facility, it was a test. The builders left it here waiting for someone to find it, to prove they were ready. "Ready for what?" Jia asked. "Ready to be caretakers," Juno replied, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They left us this technology, this responsibility. They wanted to see if we could handle it." Huck was checking other panels that had come to life. "There's more here. Scientific knowledge, star maps, things we've never imagined. They left us everything we need to move forward. But why hide it at the bottom of the ocean?" Do-hyun wondered. "Because only a civilization advanced enough to reach it would be ready to use it," Minna said. "We had to prove ourselves worthy first." A soft chime sounded through the facility. New symbols appeared on the main screen, accompanied by images that made them all stare in wonder. "It's showing us other facilities," Junho said quietly, "scattered across the galaxy, places where other civilizations faced the same test. And now we've joined them," Jia finished. The team gathered around the Earth hologram. The planet looked peaceful now, its powerful forces kept in balance by the technology they had helped restore. Above them, 11 kilometers of ocean pressed down on the facility, but they no longer feared its weight. It had become part of their legacy, part of their story. "We should contact the surface," Hike said. "Let them know we're okay." Junho nodded. The facility's communications were working again, stronger than before. "This is Mugunghwa team to surface," he said into the radio. "Mission successful, but we have a lot to tell you about what we found down here." That was an understatement. They had discovered not just an alien facility, but humanity's next step forward. The knowledge left for them would change everything. How they saw their planet, their place in the galaxy, their future among the stars. "Should we head back up?" Do-hyun asked. "Soon," Juno replied. "But first, we need to understand what we've been given. This isn't just about saving Earth anymore. It's about proving we deserved to save it." The team split up, each drawn to different parts of the facility's newly revealed knowledge. Mina studied the crystal technology. Huck explored the engineering systems. Jia examined data about other worlds. Do-hyun learned about space travel far beyond anything humans had achieved. And Junho stood watching the Earth hologram, thinking about how far they had come. From the first human settlements to the bottom of the ocean. From simple tools to technology that could stabilize planets. Every step had led them here, to this moment, to this choice. They had passed the test. Now the real work would begin.